you believe people should have a lot of sex and have it early. Now, I've always heard that if you want to be respected, you should hold out as long as you can. Otherwise, the guy won't see you as wife material. What would you say to all that?
I would say that sexist and slut shaming. And I would say that someone who wants to have sex sooner than later, that's a demonstration. It depends who we're talking about. If we're talking about someone healthy, I'll give both examples. For someone healthy, having sex sooner than later is a demonstration that I'm really serious about commitment and I want to explore all levels of intimacy. And I can learn more about someone through having sex with them than I can having coffee. Coffee, I can figure out if you like Game of Thrones and where you like to vacation. Sex, I learn about your body esteem, your self-esteem, boundaries, communication skills, and whether or not we're compatible. The problem with delaying sex is sometimes the interest is only sex, and we don't know that until we've had sex. And if I'm interested in them afterwards, then I know that there's a deeper connection that we can build on. And I want to know that.
Right. Okay. And so you brought up something that I want to ask about. What is the difference between intimacy, right? And then like one-time sex? Like, I think there's this line that people don't know how to walk on, which is like, do I have to be in love with someone to have sex? Do I have to have love feelings? Can you be sexual, and can that be okay? Can you do that in a relationship? Like, talk to me about, these issues of, wanting to be in a relationship and have intimacy, but also, having a one night stand and having that still be okay if that's who you are.
Yeah, the first thing I say, because I work with a lot of those individuals where they'll be wanting to be in a committed long-term relationship. That's a beautiful goal. And maybe they're in a similar situation as you, where they're saying, and I'm not saying you said this, but they could be parallel, where they're at a certain phase of their life and they're liking what their life has for them and they're open to relationality, but they're not necessarily desperate for it because they have a lot of beautiful things in their life that make them feel full and happy. And I'll say to them, you can seek both at the same time. There are a lot of beautiful examples of what began as sex only, leading to the uncovering of the fact that we have a lot more in common. Oh, and oh, wow, like I learned more about you. And it can lead to dating, right? So if you want relationship, my stance is be open to everything, because you never know what will lead to what. And again, I work with a lot of couples where it began as friends with benefits only, or as a one night stand, and they slept over and they had a great morning and they stuck around and went for brunch. And next thing they know, it's months later and they're still hanging out. And there's really something to this. Don't shame sex as though it can't lead to more. Sex is never just sex. Even in the dark, no names exchanged hookups are an intimate process. It's still a human being that you're connecting with. And I say that because I want people to take that seriously. I want people to take hookups seriously. You are leaving someone better off or worse off. Take that seriously. But again, if you want relationship, be open to all of it.
Right. What would you say about couples that are in sexless marriages, or even just, people that have been dating for years and that portion has fizzled out? Is that natural? I think people have started to believe that that is natural and they should just go with it. And, they might still really love the person, but their words to you would be, I'm not in love with them anymore. How do can you get out of that? Can you get back? What I mean is, can you get back into a sexual relationship with them, or do you need to get out of the relationship altogether?
Yeah, that's a painful moment. And it can be a very scary moment, right? If you're very deep in it with someone and you've built a powerful life full of home ownership and children and you have dogs, it's a very scary moment where you're confronted with, what does this lack of sex mean? So it's going to mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. The first thing I always say is don't panic. Because how sex is right now does not mean that's how it will always be. So don't panic. And I want everyone to know that expect phases where there's some sexlessness, because there is a basic biological component to this, which is under times of a lot of stress, because maybe you are dealing with issues at work or you've lost a loved one, you aren't supposed to be sexual. Your erotic system shuts down so you can attend to dealing with those stressors.
Or sometimes it's a self-esteem issue if somebody's gained weight, lost weight, whatever.
So I always say, allow some of that, but we can never go back to what was. The sexuality we have in the early stages of a relationship is not an honest or true baseline for that couple. The most arousing thing sexually is newness and novelty, and we can only find that in the beginning of a relationship. And I think the issue is that later into a relationship, we don't realize that our sexual desire will sometimes have to come from a different place. We cannot rely upon those early things. Again, newness, novelty, distance, space. Now that we're close and connected, because when we start dating someone, what do we want? I want you to text me every day. I want you to sleep over. I maybe want to live with you. That is all the death of eroticism. So in wanting all of that, you have to almost prepare for some of that magic sexually to drop. And sex desire comes from another place. So what does it come from then? It comes from this. I love you and I want to be close to you now. It's not just horniness anymore. It's I want to have a shared experience. I want deeper intimacy. It's still very pleasurable. I want to be close to you. It feels good and I feel safe after having done that with you. But some people can't handle or tolerate that. But often it has to come from a different place.
So okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and the really quick other caveat is also check in on whether or not you're having the kind of sex that's worth wanting. Are you withholding who you really are and what you really want sexually? Because that sometimes is the case.
And also, don't you sometimes maybe get into a rut and you're always doing the same positions and you think that that's what you stuck with? All of a sudden, that's what it becomes for weeks, years, whatever it is. Yeah. And that can be really boring.
Yeah, and that's not sometimes. That's common, actually. Most people do like the 1, 2, 3. We will kiss first, then I'll touch her boobs, then I'll go down on her penetration. We tend to have sex in a very patterned top to bottom process, and that is extremely boring. And so one of the interventions I give couples is start and stop with different activities. Mix it up, different times of day, different places in the house. Sex requires little tweaks. People think we have to bring in costumes and swing from the chandelier and role play and whip. Nah, you don't need to do that. Small tweaks and changes, break the patterns.
How would you suggest for someone that's going through this to get themselves or their partner in the mood then, if they've been struggling?
That's a tough one, right? Because there's so many factors that are involved in being in the mood. We have to check in with how do we feel about our own body, right? Like, how do we feel about this, which is what I'm presenting to someone when I initiate sex. So that's when I
wait, and also, I'm curious, like with women, I think it's more emotional, like how I'm feeling connected to that person. Like if they didn't take out the trash, they're pissing me off, they're being annoying, I don't want to have sex with them. But the man might be like, oh, you look so hot if you're wearing little boy shorts out and carrying the trash. And I'm like, don't fucking touch me. So how do you get on, right? But aren't men visual and women are more emotional?
It's both. I work with some men that are definitely emotional, and I work with some women that are definitely very visual. It's particular to the person, but you nailed a really important key concept, which is foreplay. Initiation of sex happens long before you actually approach sex, right? So when someone's coming towards you, they are symbolizing every experience you've had with them hours, days, and weeks prior. So if you haven't taken out the trash and you've been a jerk and you've acted like a slob for days and weeks, that's what I'm feeling and seeing coming at me. So foreplay means be a good person, be a good partner, and that will make someone want to receive what's coming at them. So it's about, again, how does your partner perceive you as a person, but also how do you feel about that which you're bringing to them? You know, the joke I always give, I use a lot of food examples, is sex is like a potluck. If you show up at the dinner and you're proud of what you brought, you're going to put it on the table, you're pointing at it, you want everyone to see it. That's how you have to feel about yourself. But if you don't feel good about who you are, you're going to kind of tuck that meal away and don't want to acknowledge it's yours. So It's about both. The relationship, how's that going? And also, how do you feel about yourself?